All right, welcome back. In our last explainer, we broke down how to diagnose AKI. Today, we're taking the crucial next step, how to manage it. We're going to cover everything from your very first move at the bedside all the way to the absolute hard and fast reasons to start dialysis.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the most basic, most fundamental decision you have to make. Then, we're going to tackle the two big killers in AKI, high potassium and severe acidosis. After that, we'll touch on something really important, nutrition. And we'll wrap it all up with a super high-yield mnemonic that I promise you will use for the rest of your career.
Okay, let's get right into it. When you walk into a room and see a patient with acute kidney injury, your entire thought process, your entire management plan, it all hinges on one single critical assessment. Before you even think about ordering a battery of tests or starting some complex medication, you have to answer one simple question. What is this patient's volume status? Are they dry, meaning hypovolemic, or are they wet, meaning they're fluid overloaded? And this right here is the fork in the road. It splits your whole algorithm in two. If the patient is dry, maybe they've been vomiting for days. Your job is to give them fluids, usually a good bolus of 1 to 3 liters of isotonic crystalloids to get those kidneys perfused again. But if they're wet, you're hearing crackles in their lungs, they're in pulmonary edema, you need to do the exact opposite. You got to get that fluid off with IV loop diuretics like furosemide.
Okay, now this is huge. I really need you to lock this in because it's a super common and dangerous myth. You should never use diuretics just to make urine or to try and prevent AKI. The evidence is crystal clear. It just doesn't work. It's like trying to wring water out of an already bone-dry sponge. You're just going to cause more damage. Diuretics have one job here and one job only, to manage volume overload, period.
All right, so once you've made that first big decision on volume, the next step is to tackle the things that can go wrong, and go wrong fast. We're talking about the complications that can kill your patient in minutes.
So let's talk about hyperkalemia. This really is the silent killer in AKI. And the reason we're so terrified of it, it's all about the heart. High potassium makes the cardiac muscle unstable and can trigger deadly arrhythmias out of nowhere. Luckily, we have a very clear 3-step algorithm to deal with it.
It's a 3-step dance, and the order is absolutely critical. Ready? Stabilize, shift, eliminate. Just burn that into your memory. Stabilize the heart, shift the potassium into the cells, and then eliminate it from the body for good.
Okay, step 1, stabilize. And listen, this is a super important point. Calcium does not lower the potassium one bit. Not at all. Think of it like a bulletproof vest for the heart. It just shields the cardiac cells from the effects of the high potassium, buying you precious time to actually get the levels down.
Now for step 2, shift. And I have to stress, this is just a temporary fix. We're basically playing a shell game with the potassium. We're not getting rid of it, we're just hiding it inside the cells for a little while. The go-to agents for this are insulin, which pulls potassium in with glucose, and beta agonists like albuterol.
And that brings us to the final and most important step. Step 3, eliminate. This is where we get that potassium out of the body for good. If the patient's still making urine, you can try diuretics. You can use binders that grab potassium in the gut. But when things are serious, the big gun, the most definitive way to remove potassium is dialysis.
All right, the other big bad guy on the block is severe metabolic acidosis. The kidneys are failing, they can't excrete acid, and so the body's pH just starts to tank. The magic number you need to remember here is 7.1. Once the pH drops below 7.1, the body's in real trouble. It can weaken the heart's ability to pump and lead to total cardiovascular collapse.
Now, you might be thinking, low pH? Let's just give some IV bicarb. But hold on. You have to be so careful here. Each little ampule of bicarb is a huge load of sodium. If you give that to a patient who can't make urine, you're basically pouring salt and water into them, which can easily push them into full-blown pulmonary edema.
Okay, so while all that emergency stuff is happening, we also have to think about the long game, and that means supportive care, specifically nutrition. You can't just forget to feed a critically ill patient.
The whole idea here is to find a balance, right? You got to give them enough protein to keep them from breaking down their own muscle, but not so much that you're just creating more waste products for the broken kidneys to handle. But here's the twist, and this is a fantastic board question. As soon as you put a patient on dialysis, you actually have to increase their protein. That's because dialysis pulls out good stuff, like amino acids, along with the bad stuff. So you've got to give more to keep up.
And all of this leads us to the big question, the one we've been building up to. When do you throw in the towel on medical management and say, okay, it's time to call for renal replacement therapy? It's time to start dialysis.
Well, for this, there is an absolute classic high-yield mnemonic that you need to tattoo on your brain. It's AEIOU. It perfectly summarizes the 5 hard, absolute indications for starting urgent dialysis. Let's walk through it, letter by letter.
First up, A is for acidosis. But listen, it's not just any acidosis, it's that severe acidosis with the pH less than 7.1. That is refractory to medical treatment. That is the absolute key word. You've tried giving bicarbonate, it's not working, or you simply can't give anymore because of fluid overload. Boom, that's your indication for dialysis. Next, E is for electrolytes. And let's be honest, 99% of the time, this means potassium. We're talking severe hyperkalemia, a K plus over 6.5. Or, even scarier, EKG changes. And again, what's that magic word? Refractory. You've tried the whole stabilize, shift, eliminate strategy, and the potassium is still dangerously high. It's time for dialysis.
I is for intoxication. This is a pretty cool one. Certain poisons and drugs are just the right size and don't stick to proteins, which means the dialysis filter can pull them right out of the blood. The classic examples are toxic alcohols like methanol and ethylene glycol, and drugs like salicylates, aspirin, and lithium. Dialysis can be literally life-saving here.
O is for overload. I want you to picture this. Your patient is literally drowning in their own fluid. They've got flash pulmonary edema, they can't breathe, you've slammed them with high-dose IV diuretics, and nothing. Not a drop of urine. That is a refractory volume overload, and the only way to get that fluid off is to physically pull it out with dialysis.
And finally, U is for uremia. And this is so important. Uremia is a clinical diagnosis, not just a high BUN on a lab report. It's when the buildup of all those waste products actually starts causing organ damage. The classic signs are pericarditis, inflammation around the heart, or uremic encephalopathy, where the brain is affected, causing confusion, that classic flapping tremor called asterixis, or even seizures.
So there you have it, AEIOU. And did you notice the common theme? For A, E, and O, acidosis, electrolytes, and overload, the absolute key is that they are refractory to medical management. You always try the simpler stuff first. Dialysis is the ultimate life-saving safety net for when those therapies just aren't enough.
Okay, let's bring it all home. The core principles are check volume status first, hammer the life threats like potassium and acid, don't forget nutrition, and know your AEIOUs cold. But I want to leave you with one final thought. What's the one single factor that tells you, okay, I've got some time here, I can see if my medical treatments will work? The answer is urine output. If your patient is still making urine, you have options. You can use diuretics to manage their fluid and their potassium. But the minute they become anuric, they stop making urine, you've lost a major tool, and they are much more likely to need dialysis and need it soon.